Hello and good morning, at least where I am. Well, I'm here. It's been a little bit since I live streamed some World of Warcraft stuff here on the channel, and I wanted to get in a stream that was more for the European side of the world, I guess, the other side, as I kind of like to call it. So it's a little spontaneous, no heads up, I know, but here we are. And in this stream, we're going to be talking about the Shadowlands pre-patch notes and some of the concerns that I have for the expansion. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, both IRL, which is why things have been a little bit chaotic, but also in the World of Warcraft, things have been a little crazy for the past couple of weeks. Kind of talked about some of this stuff a little bit in my last video, but we're going to touch on, I guess, some of the updates and developments. You guys bear with me. Try and do this stream, like I said, for the other side. It means I'm probably not quite awake yet, but we're going to get into it. Also, I know there's going to be plenty of people who are like, what? You were live streaming while I was asleep? Yep, I was. Sorry, you're not the lucky ones this time. So, Fierce is morning. Theory BP, what live in the middle of the day? On my day off, no less. The middle of the day. Whoo, it's the morning for me. You could tell my hair's all like, ugh. Not that it's great anyway. All right, let's get into this. We're going to switch over and we're going to make me small. Here we go. And get into some Wowhead stuff, some patch notes and all this kind of good stuff. So I kind of wanted to kick this off by taking a look at the pre-expansion patch notes, because I feel like this is more of like the fun stuff. So here we are. Blizzard recently released the pre-expansion patch notes, is what they're calling it. It's the pre-patch patch notes. So this gives us the details from Blizzard on exactly what's coming in the pre-patch. And I wanted to run through this. I mentioned this some in the last WoW video that I did, but this is just confirmation of exactly what is in there and some of the changes that are going to be happening. And I just kind of want to talk about them and go over them. So we've got the limited pre-patch event, which is Death Rising. And this is kind of a throwback to the event that they did for Wrath of the Lich King, where the Scourge is going to sweep across all of Azeroth and you're going to be turning into zombies and infecting other people and all that kind of stuff. Some people like this event. Some people don't. I honestly can't remember if I liked it or not. I know I played during that time period, but this didn't last very long. So I can't really remember if I enjoyed it or not. I'm going to go with probably not, because it's just disruptive to whatever you want to do normally. And me, I kind of just, I usually want to get in, do whatever I need to do and get out. But we'll see how it goes. I have not played this. It was available on like the PTR and the beta, but I didn't want to experience it twice in case I didn't like it. So I haven't tried it out myself, but this will be coming, but it's not coming as soon as the pre-patch comes out. So the pre-patch comes out on October 13th, but this event does not start then. It's going to be after the pre-patch launch at some point. They said shortly after pre-expansion launch, whatever that means in Blizzard terms. Who knows? Levels, items, and stats adjusted. So this is basically saying like, hey, the stats or the level squish is coming, and with the level squish, you're getting your item squish and the item level squish, and you're also getting your stat squish. So everything is being compressed down. I know right now a lot of our gear is somewhere in the 400s. I think in Shadowlands it drops down to around 100-ish. And most of your gear is going to be between 100 to 200 at the start. I think there are a couple of pieces of gear that might be around 200 or a little bit higher in the beta. I can't remember. But there's going to be a significant item level squish along with a stat squish. So instead of doing tens of thousands of damage, you're going to be back down in the 100 and 1,000 to 2,000. Maybe 4,000 with some really strong hits going on. So that's going to happen. All your level 120 characters are going to become level 50. And we're going to be leveling up from 50 to 60 in Shadowlands. So for the pre-patch, 50 is going to be the max level. And if you're going to start any new characters or anything like that, that's what you're shooting for. We got new character customization. I actually really like this picture a lot. I think this is pretty cool. So they're showing off a wide variety of some different customization options that maybe aren't quite apparent if you're just kind of glancing at the picture. But we have like the blood elves with the blue eyes over here. We've got some of their jewelry, which is new. You can also choose the color of the jewelry, which is pretty cool. For the human, we've got different, like totally different face shapes that were added in. And this is one of those. I believe this hairstyle already exists, but once again, they have some jewelry and stuff like that too, which is pretty nice. And then over on the orc side, we did get some new hairstyles, some new hair colors. We've got the face. I can't remember if these are tattoos. There's like two different things you can get. One of them is tattoos, and I think this is like a war paint that you can add on there. But I actually really like this. And the thing that gets me about this image is it might seem really simple, but this actually really looks like a sort of modern day high fantasy, party going out. You got like your rogue, your warrior, your warlock, your caster, or whatever. And like I actually do think the diversity in this picture is really cool. We just have so many more options now to like really get in and kind of just create like your own little unique character compared to what we've had before. And this is one of the most exciting things about the pre-patch to me, is the fact that all this character customization is coming in. And I'm really excited about it. So there's going to be a brand new interface for that. There's going to be new options. As far as I know, the new options still just apply to the main races, not the allied races. You're going to be able to hit up the barber shop when the pre-patch comes out. I'm sure tons of people are going to be in there checking out the new customization options, and you're going to be able to get into that. Also, I want to clarify, some of the allied races have a few things here and there. They're just nowhere near the amount of new customization options that the baseline races have. Also, if you are a druid, you're going to be able to go to the barber shop and individually select your forms and what they look like. So if you want to have like a black bear and then like a green cat or whatever, you're going to be able to do that kind of stuff instead of having it all tied to like your hair color. And your hair color can be whatever you want it to be. So if you're a druid, you got like a lot of flexibility that I actually am really excited about on a druid, because it always kind of annoyed me, like, oh, my character's hair has to be pink so I can have this cool cat form and then the bear form is just okay. Well, now we're going to be able to switch that around at the barbershop. On top of that, you can switch your gender at the barbershop too. So if for whatever reason you were bored with like the character gender that you had, or you just wanted to change it for whatever reason, you're going to be able to do that as well. And all that stuff, I believe, is just like the regular barbershop low amount of gold to do. Tariq, how's it going? William Barber, what's up? Thanks for tuning in, you guys. I know it's spontaneous and early, but I appreciate it. So new character customization, super exciting. And then we have the new starting experience. And I can't stress this enough. Like, this is it's just really cool. I really enjoyed playing this starting experience, and I'm excited to play it more. And I am going to play it more. I definitely encourage everybody, even if you don't need another alt or whatever, like play 1 to 10. This takes roughly an hour if you take your time, and then you're off into the new Chromie time leveling system, which we're going to get to here in the article. But it's just fun. It's really cool to see what World of Warcraft can do for a like new player experience when they're given like modern tools and design philosophy and art assets and stuff to accomplish that. And this is just a heck of a lot of fun. I'm going to be live streaming this coming up Tuesday, provided that the servers aren't just like a dumpster fire because of pre-patch releasing, because I'll be starting some new characters and stuff for our streams. So this is a lot of fun. I encourage everybody to check it out. So you've got Exile's Reach, which is the new starting experience. It's the starter island. You come in with a character and you just start there at level 1. Like I said, it takes about an hour if you take your time, and that'll get you from 1 to 10. and then you're off into the time walking campaigns. So the time walking campaigns, basically, if you've already experienced Battle for Azeroth and have reached level 50 on at least one character, you can choose to level any other characters in a different expansion using time walking campaigns. Now, this is the wording here is what I really like. It says this new feature allows content from locations like Northrend or Pandaria to scale to a player's level, so they can adventure from level 10 all the way to 50 and experience the stories of these areas at their originally intended pacing. Visit Chromie near the embassies in Stormwind or Orgrimmar to select your expansion leveling experience. If you'd like a different expansion to level through, simply speak to Chromie again. So this is actually really exciting to me. I assume here it says to experience the stories of these areas at their originally intended pacing. So this is a question that I've had. I haven't done the testing on the beta to figure this out because I've been focused on Shadowlands content. But if the stories are supposed to be at their original pacing, what that lets me know is that if you go back to something like Wrath of the Lich King and you get to Northrend, you're going to be able to play through multiple zones as you level, but you won't need to play through all of the zones to get to max level, because that was not the case during Wrath of the Lich King. You did not have to level. I think there were like 1 or 2 zones that you just didn't have to play through all the way before you hit max level. I know because I specifically did not do much of anything in Ice Crown when I was leveling. So this to me just like it. I like it because it sounds like you're going to get to experience the pacing at roughly what it is or was when the expansion came out, which means you don't have to play through the entire thing if you don't want to, but it does mean that you're going to get to play through multiple zones. And I think for my part, what I want to do for live streams and stuff in particular is I want to start a couple of new characters and actually play through these previous expansions via the time walking campaigns and just kind of go back and experience them for nostalgia's sake. And mainly what I want to do is do that for Burning Crusade, which was my, hands down favorite expansion so far in World of Warcraft. And I also want to do this for Wrath of the Lich King. I'm not sure about the other ones, but I still definitely want to check these out. Now, along with this, if you want to, you still have the option to go do the regular starting experience. So if you don't want to do the new Exiles Reach Island, you don't have to. You also can opt in to just do Battle for Azeroth from 10 to 50 if you want. And if you don't have a max level character, then you're doing Battle for Azeroth until you get one. So if you don't have a max level character, you basically go to Exiles Reach 1 to 10, go straight into Battle for Azeroth. And once you hit level 50, that flexibility opens up for you. Life and Sun, hey, how's it going? Noob question here. Even though these are Shadowlands changes, they are all being implemented in the pre-patch. Yes, everything in this post that I'm talking about now is coming on October 13th. So the stuff that doesn't, this is how WoW has pretty much done expansions for as long as I can remember. The expansion itself has a launch date, and that's when all the new content for like max level and above comes in. But prior to that, there's a pre-patch that implements the system changes. So, for example, if they do a stat squish, that comes before the actual expansion launch. If they do, like this leveling squish, that comes in. The class changes for abilities and gameplay and everything, that comes in beforehand. And this one kind of lets them test the waters with everything, with a larger player base, a larger, amount of testers trying everything out. And it also gives people time to adjust to the new systems before they actually play the expansion content, so that day one, they're not just sitting around going, I don't understand what's going on. So yes, all the stuff in this post here is coming Tuesday. Does anyone know how they are handling the Panda starting area? So like I said, as far as I know, you can still opt into those areas. I don't know how the scaling is going to be in terms of like what level you'll be when you get out of that. But as far as I know, they have not eliminated the ability to play the other areas if you want. But they've set up Exile's Reach so it basically can apply to anybody. So I think yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to beta. That might be something to check on beta when I do a next stream, is what happens with pandas. I've checked, what happens with Death Knights and Demon Hunters and that kind of stuff. So if you play a Demon Hunter or a Death Knight, so if you play a Demon Hunter, you start at a much lower level than you do now, but you still start in the Demon Hunter starting area. So you do that whole experience, and I believe that spits you out at roughly the same area as you would be if you finished Exile's Reach. For the Death Knights, if you're an allied race, you just kind of roll up and go, hey, Bolvar, we're good. And then it spits you out at roughly the same place. And if you're a non-allied race doing the Death Knight thing, you do the normal starting experience and it spits you out there as well. So we have newcomer chat. Whatever. Achievements. So flying in Warlords of Draenor and Legion no longer requires earning the achievements. Draenor Pathfinder and Broken Isles Pathfinder Part 2. So if you're like me and you have 0 pathfinding achievements, you're going to be able to finally fly in Warlords of Draenor and Legion. I believe this still requires you to spend some gold, and I think that gold is spent on a character per character basis, but don't quote me on that because I haven't checked in the beta, and I know there's been some question about what's going on with that. But I believe it's just another type of flight training, just like you would do for Burning Crusade or Northrend. Allied races. So unlocking allied races no longer requires reaching exalted reputation with that race's associated faction. So this is really cool. This is what I'm excited about. This is why I'm going to be leveling some new characters. I have access to a few allied races, but there are plenty that I don't. And especially if you were playing like mainly Horde or, one faction or the other for BFA, this means you're going to be able to just flip-flop over to the other faction if you want and create those allied races. As far as I know, you still have to do the introductory quest experience to get the race. You just don't need the exalted reputation. So you will still have to do the little lead-in quest and everything to unlock them. But once you do, you're good to go. From what I've seen in Shadowlands beta, anytime I've picked a Pandaren character to create, I literally just pick the faction and it's an option for both factions. So normally I think you pick one and then somewhere along the way after the starting experience, you make your decision to go Horde or Alliance. In the Shadowlands beta, which it could just be something that they implemented for beta, but when I create a Pandaren in beta, it's literally just they're an option, a race option at the bottom for both factions. So I'm assuming you just pick your faction and then you pick Panda and you're good to go, and you're actually picking it before you even play. There are some auction house changes, which are free to look at here. This is just adding in some additional options and some quality of life stuff. Some black market auction house stuff. So the mighty caravan Brutosaur is no longer going to be sold. So that means if you haven't gotten your 5 million gold or whatever to get your Brutosaur, then you're SOL. It says max level is now required to access the black market auction house as well. Okay, so then we have the class changes. I'm going to skip that and come back to that because that's kind of the chunkier, meatier part of this. Dungeons and raids. So we've got some changes to Mythic Keystone dungeon affixes. Item rewards. Corrupted items are no longer going to function. The corruption effects are no longer going to function. Heart of Azarath rank 4 essences are no longer obtainable. There's also some other changes here as well. All Legion legendary items bonuses no longer activate. And then there's nerfs to some different stuff as well. So leatherworking drums now provide 15% haste instead of 25. A lot of consumables have increased cooldowns. Scrolls and stuff can no longer be used by characters above level 50. This seems to be a common thing that they're doing, where they're making a lot of pre-Shadowlands stuff stop functioning once you hit Shadowlands level. This one's interesting. Water now regenerates mana slower in the first seconds you begin drinking, increasing to a rapid return as you drink continuously. I'm assuming there's some sort of balance or possibly like PvP issue that was coming up with that has caused them to implement this, because that just seems like the kind of thing that nobody would care about unless it was being like abused or exploited somehow. We've reduced the amount of value that critical strike, haste, mastery, and versatility secondary stats provide when reaching high thresholds. So once again, that's just keeping people from getting too crazy, too out of hands. Here's a huge one that I feel like I need to make an entire video on, and probably will. Heirlooms no longer have experience bonuses and now have a set bonus. The new set bonus can be obtained from all heirloom pieces except weapons and trinkets. So at the 2 set bonus, your rested experience consumed is reduced by 30%, which means that your rested experience will last you longer. Rested experience gives you bonus experience, I think, when you kill stuff and discover things and anything that isn't related to like a quest turn in. It's really good for using if you're just going to like dungeon farm. The 3 set bonus increases your out of combat regeneration in the outdoors, normal dungeons, and battlegrounds. So when you're not in combat, you have increased out of combat regeneration. So it's okay. I'm not going to get into this too much. I'll just say I don't like what they've done with heirlooms. Yeah, I don't like it at all. 4 set bonus says gaining a level triggers burst of knowledge, dealing holy damage to nearby enemies or to no one because you're at town turning in a quest, and granting you 40% primary stat for 2 minutes. Woo! Defeating additional enemies extends this effect up to 2 additional minutes. Woo! And then the 6 set bonus, rested experience consumed, is reduced by an additional 30%. Yeah, I just hate what they've done to heirlooms. I think this is all absolute garbage. And heirlooms, in my opinion, are no longer worth it, like, at all. Save your gold. The most popular video, or the most viewed video on this channel, is my heirlooms guide. And it is now null and void. And because it's so popular, I'm going to have to go and add notes and be like, guys, just don't. Definitely, in my opinion, not worth the gold anymore. So elixirs, a couple of these will become poor quality and no longer usable. Drought of the 10 lands will still retain the 10% experience bonus, what will now be capped at level 50. That seems fine to me. Glyphs that change the appearance of a druid's form are now one-time use and unlock the appearance permanently at the barber shop. That's pretty cool quality of life change. PvP weapon illusions can be used by all characters across the account. Also nice. And you can no longer champion a Mist of Pandaria faction for bonus reputation. I don't know why. That one seemed a little bit weird to me. But maybe it's just like an artifact from the previous expansion that they wanted to get rid of. Tony Bellander, hey, first time, welcome to the chat, appreciate that. Patrick, water thing is definitely about arena. Yeah, that's what I figured. It was definitely like a PvP thing. Either that or it was like a raid or mythic dungeon exploit. That's the only reason they would change that stuff. Pet battles. I honestly don't know that much about pet battles. I mean, I've played them some, but there's some changes for pet battles in here. I'm not going to comment on these too much. Same thing for PvP. The main thing to note here is that Battle for Azeroth Season 4 is going to end with the launch of the Prepatch. During the off-season, Mythic Keystone dungeons will still be playable using Season 4 affixes and rewards. So basically the season is ending. Gladiator mounts and titles, including those from previous seasons, can be used by all characters across the account the mount and titles were earned on. That's pretty sick, honestly. I don't have any of those, but a lot of them look awesome, and I think that's a pretty sweet reward for all the PvP players out there, actually. And then Gladiator's Medallion, Adaptation, and Relentless have been removed from Honor talents. The functionality of removing control and pairing effects will be restored as a powerful PvP trinket option that can be purchased with Honor, blah, 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 blah. So they're taking the talent version of this away and just turning it back into a PvP trinket. I don't know enough about PvP to know whether that's good or bad one way or the other. All right, user interface. Couple of good things here. So we get a navigational marker that's going to appear on screen to direct you to quest objectives, reducing the need to open and close the map. This is functional in beta. I like it a lot. You basically can just like pick the quest that you're tracking, and you get a little marker. And the nice thing is, at least for Shadowlands, I don't know how. I'm assuming this works too for the previous content because it works in Exile's Reach as well. But there's a distinction between the marker for a main story quest that's actually going to progress you through the zone versus something that's more akin to like a side quest. So you get like I think it's a big yellow marker for the main quest, and then the other quests have something a little bit different. Pins can now be placed on the world map by pressing Control left click, and the map pin can be tracked with the navigational marker and shared in chat. So really cool stuff. I actually really like the fact that they added in this marker system. I think it's going to be nice for playing with other players and just in general, just kind of keeping your flow going. The one thing I will say is just because you have a marker, it doesn't mean it's a straight shot over there, because you still have to navigate terrain, you still have to avoid enemies and all that kind of stuff. Druids are now able to customize their shapeshift forms. We went over that. It's kind of weird for them to just like put it in here, but I guess it does apply to the interface because it adds some additional interface options in the Barber shop. So right here, campaign quests have separate headers in the tracker as well. There's now a collapse button for each section in the quest tracker. So for example, if you have a campaign quest, some side quests, and you have like a bonus objective, you can collapse those sections independently from one another, so it's not all or nothing. Player spells have been rearranged in the spell book, so now every class has, you've got your general tab, which has like your racials and your like just super like weapon skills and flight skills and stuff like that. Then you have a class tab that shows the abilities that are available to players of that class, regardless of specialization. Then you have the specialization specific spells underneath their own tabs. Now, this is going to be a little bit confusing for a lot of people because a lot of the abilities that you currently identify as spec specific are going to wind up in that class tab, and that's something to look out for. For example, if you're playing on a protection warrior, shield slam is something that basically just protection warrior uses, but they've given that ability to all warriors. So now shield slam is actually in the class tab, not the specialization tab. So that's an example of some of the situations where you're going to see that happen. So if you are looking for an ability as you're flipping through your specialization tab, just know that a lot of those got moved into the class tab. Hovering over the resource bar is now going to show a tooltip at the cursor location. You can use the self-cast key modifier on friendly target location spells to place them at your location. You can now adjust key bindings when mousing over an action or micro menu button from the new quick keybind mode option in the key bindings menu. That's interesting. I haven't seen, heard of, or tried that at all, actually. I'm going to need to figure that out. That might be pretty cool if you can just like mouse over your ability and just like hot swap the keybind. That could be neat. Encounter abilities are now searchable in the adventure guide, which is pretty cool if, you know, a boss does Mega Smash 3000, then you can now search for Mega Smash 3000. Item sets tab has been removed from the adventure guide. Group leaders can start a countdown timer now. Auction house and player mail notifications will now show on the character selection screen. Oh, that's kind of neat. That'll let you know that you have mail and stuff on your character without having to log into it to check. The UI scale setting has moved from the advanced section to the graphics section in system settings. There are new accessibility options for motion sickness, screen fade, keybind, camera cursor control, and movement support for gamepad controllers. Cinematic subtitles are now defaulted to on. The ability to join a Battle.net group voice chat from the game client has been temporarily disabled. And the credit screen has been updated and redesigned for Shadowlands. So some nice quality of life stuff for the user interface. And I actually like most of these changes quite a bit. World events, Brawlers Guild is temporarily closed and will come back later. And then the WoW companion app, Legion missions and followers are now available. Characters can now be favorited in the character selection screen. And the latest WoW news is available in the app. So they're trying to improve the companion app. There's supposed to be even more improvements beyond this as well as we head into Shadowlands, where you're going to be able to manage all the previous expansions that had this sort of system and were available in the companion app are supposed to be returning. But it looks like for now we're just getting Legion, and we'll see where that goes. All right, let's bounce back up to the class changes. Now, a lot of these I've talked about already, so I just want to highlight the big important stuff. Okay, so for general stuff, non-periodic damage or healing abilities now have a 5% variance. So your abilities no longer hit for 100 damage, they hit for 95 to 105 damage. So whatever. A lot of the aura buffs for your party, Power Word, Fortitude, Arcane Intellect, Battle Shout, give 5% of their respective stats instead of 10%. We've got the self-cast of area spells using self-cast modifiers. Abilities that reduce the healing received by a target have their effectiveness doubled against creatures, and the effectiveness stays the same against players. And many area of effect abilities have had their damage and their maximum number of targets adjusted. So this one, I think, out of everything here, is the most important one. So many area of effect abilities have had their damage and their maximum number of targets adjusted. So there are two things here that you have to pay attention to when this pre-patch comes out, because if you're on a class that's used to being able to pull 15 different things and just AoE them down, that is not going to be the case in Shadowlands. In a lot of cases. So what this means is that many area of effect abilities now cap between like 5 to 8 targets being hit at once. So, and I'm just making this up, okay? But if you were to, say, pull some stuff on a Guardian Druid, where normally you could pull 15 different enemies and Thrash would hit all of them, now Thrash will hit 5 to 8 of those targets. It specifically says we'll hit 5 targets, we'll hit 8 targets, etc. So let's say it hits 8 targets. Now you've pulled 15 things and you cast Thrash and you hit 8 of those targets. The next time you Thrash, you'll hit 8 of those targets. The next time, 8 of those targets. So what that means is that 7 of those targets, that first time you hit Thrash, just don't take any damage. You're not putting, threat on them. You're not doing anything to those targets because you're just not hitting them. So that means that you can't do those crazy huge pulls and expect to hold that threat and to do that DPS like you have been doing. Also, there have been some damage adjustments too. Once again, just making this up, okay? But in that same scenario, it could be that your Thrash still hits everything. It hits all 15 targets, but it hits secondary or tertiary targets at a reduced amount of damage. So you no longer do full damage to everything in the area either. Not every ability has been like nerfed in this way. There are still some abilities that do like full damage to all the targets. A lot of spells like, and once again, don't quote me on this, like Firestorm and stuff like that still hit everything in the area. But a lot of the spammy, especially melee style abilities have been target capped or had these damage reductions done. Son is deaf and wants to start playing. That's nice about the subtitles. Yeah, awesome. I'm all for more accessibility, especially, considering my issues as well. I'm definitely interested to check out the gamepad support and see how that works. There's some add-ons and stuff that I've used to kind of mess around with gamepad support, but I'm interested to see what you can do without having to get into add-ons now. Okay, so that, like I said, is kind of the biggest thing here in terms of the general changes, in my opinion. So, moving on, Death Knights. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into this. I just want to highlight the sort of big things that are in here. So we'll go down the page. So general. So all Death Knights can now use the following abilities: Death Coil, Death and Decay, Raise Dead, Chains of Ice, Lichborn, and Anti-Magic Zone. Rune Forging now has 5 runes available to engrave on your weapon. Some of these are pretty cool, so definitely check these out. I think you are actually going to have options depending on your playstyle and what type of content you're doing now. So that's going to spice things up a little bit. And getting into Blood, nothing too crazy for Blood. Frost, the main thing here is that Frost can now use a 2-handed weapon. So Obliterate, Frost Strike, Frost Scythe, and Glacial Advance can now be used with 2-handed weapons. Obliterate's got a nice new animation that looks pretty sick. Frostworm's Fury is no longer a talent and will be learned by all Frost Knights at level 44. So this is now baseline. For new passives, we got Might of the Frozen Waste, and this is sort of their balance between dual wielding and 2-handers. So if you are dual wielding, your Obliterate and Frost Strike will also strike with your offhand, and you can engrave each weapon with a Rune Forge enchant. At rank 2, it increases your Obliterate damage by 35% and Killing Machine proc chance when using a 2-handed weapon. So they're providing a little bit of variance, a little bit of variety to dual wielding versus 2-handed. Empower Rune Weapon Pillar Frost are off the GCD. So we got some talent adjustments as well. So here's a great example. Frost Scythe is now capped at 5 targets. So this is one of the ones that has gotten that like target cap sort of nerf. It's a nerf. Unholy. So the Unholy Mastery Dreadblade now also increases the damage of your minions' abilities. Epidemic is no longer a talent, and all Death Knights are going to learn it. What else do we have? Just hit the highlights here. New talent, Unholy Pact. So when you use Dark Transformation, you create an Unholy Pact and ignite flaming chains between you and your pet, which is pretty cool. All right, moving on to Demon Hunter. Newly created Demon Hunters now begin at level 8. So they start at level 8. You go to the Demon Hunter starting experience. I believe that gets you to roughly level 10, and then it boots you out and lets you do the crummy time stuff. Immolation Aura is no longer a talent for Havoc and is learned by all Demon Hunters through their initial questing experience or at level 10. Havoc has a new passive. It increases your maximum fury to 120. We got some changes and modifications here. Here we go. Blade Dance and Death Sweep are now capped at 5 targets. We got a couple of new talents as well. Burning Hatred. Immolation Aura generates an additional 60 fury over 12 seconds. So this sort of replaces the Immolation Aura talent we had before. Now we have Unbound Chaos, which replaces Fell Mastery. Activating Immolation Aura will cause your inner demon to slam into nearby enemies at the end of your next Fell Rush, dealing chaos damage. So some more interaction with the Immolation Aura. This sounds cooler than it looks. I was hoping that this would actually look pretty cool. And it's not... There's like a delay to the demon slamming into the enemies. So I was hoping you would like Fell Rush and just like slam. But it's kind of like you Fell Rush and then the demon comes behind you. It's kind of weird. And then Glaive Tempest. Launch 2 demonic glaives in a whirlwind of energy, causing chaos damage over 3 seconds to 5 nearby enemies. I actually really like this talent. I think it's really cool, and I liked playing with it in Torghast a lot too. Fell Barrage is now capped at 8 targets. I'm totally fine with that because I normally used it to just down like 1 to 3 targets anyway. So some other stuff in there. Vengeance Demon Hunters now use Fury as a resource instead of Pain. So weird, but whatever. Demonic Wards increased to stamina and armor have been moved to a new passive called Thick Skin, which increases stamina by 65% and armor by 100%. Soul Cleave replaces Chaos Strike. Shear replaces Demon's Bite. And Infernal Strike replaces Fell Rush when selecting the Vengeance specialization. So basically the style of ability is shared between both specializations, but they get tweaked, I guess. So like Infernal Strike is a movement ability, which replaces Fell Rush, which is a movement ability. Fell Devastation is no longer a talent and is learned by all Vengeance Demon Hunters at level 11. Additionally, it now costs 50 Fury, which is ridiculous. Soul Cleave is capped at 5 targets. And we got some new talents as well. Monks felt the caps the most. Yeah, I believe it. Druids. Travel forms, ground forms are no longer mountable. What? What? Why? That's not cool. What? Okay. The stag form ability has been renamed mount form, and ground forms are mountable when using this ability. The ability is learned from Tome of the Wild's mount form, available in the Druid Order Hall, the Dream Grove, and is automatically learned for players who have already learned Tome of the Wild's stag form prior to the update. What is the point of that? I'm really not sure. The Lunar Wing appearance is mountable when selected as the flight form appearance at the Barber shop. Okay. Lunar Strike has been renamed back to Starfire. Solar Wrath has been named back to Wrath. All druids can use the following abilities: Ferocious Bite, Barkskin, Cyclone, Stampeding Roar, Iron Fur, and Wrath. Swipe is now capped at 5 targets. The following talents have been adjusted. So the main one I want to talk about here is Heart of the Wild. So this replaces Typhoon, which is now a ability that you get when you choose Balance Affinity. And this says abilities associated with your chosen affinity are substantially empowered for 45 seconds. This has a 5-minute cooldown and shifts you into the appropriate form upon cast, except when you're in Restoration Affinity. So, if you're in Resto Affinity, for example, the healing of your Resto spells gets pumped by 30% and mana cost reduced by 50%. And it's the same thing going down the line. Basically, your affinity abilities and powers and stuff for 45 seconds just get like a nice like steroid injection to make them better. Balance has just like totally changed. So they have a new mastery, Total Eclipse. Solar Eclipse increases nature damage by 11%, and Lunar Eclipse increases arcane damage by 11%. Eclipse passive has been redesigned and works with the Balance Affinity talent. Casting 2 Starfires empowers Wrath. Casting 2 Wraths empowers Starfire. These eclipses occur in alternation. So what that means is you cannot do a solar eclipse, solar eclipse, solar eclipse. It's solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. You're going back and forth. as you go. When you're in a solar eclipse, your Wrath cast time is reduced by 15% and damage increased by 20%. When you're in a lunar eclipse, your Starfire cast time is reduced by 15%, and the critical strike chance of Starfire is increased by 20%. So there's a lot of changes that go into that, but this is kind of a really big rework for the class, so we're going to skip over that for now. Just know that your mastery and the eclipse system has been redesigned, and there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to figure out from there. Feral, not a whole lot of changes here. Berserk has been redesigned, and a couple of talents have been adjusted. So Blood Talents has been totally redesigned. When you use 3 different combo point generating abilities within 4 seconds, the damage of your next 2 rips or ferocious bites is increased by 30%, and Brutal Slash is now capped at 5 targets. Guardians got a new ability, Berserk. Go Berserk for 15 seconds, reducing the cooldowns of Mangle, Thrash, Growl, and Frenzy regeneration by 50%, and the cost of Iron Fur by 50%. 3-minute cooldown. They also got Infected Wounds, so Mangle and Maul will slow the target's movement speed by 50% for 12 seconds. Berserk no longer has a global cooldown, and a couple of talents have been adjusted as well. We got some new ones here. Because Ursol's Vortex is now an affinity ability as well. So that's no longer a talent. So we got Renewal, which is available on lots of other druids. It instantly heals you for 30% of your max health. And then we got Tooth and Claw, which replaces Lunar Beam. Auto attacks have a 20% chance to empower Maul, stacking up to 2. Empowered Maul deals 40% increased damage and reduces the target's damage to you by 15% for 6 seconds. Moving into Resto, we got a nerf to the cooldown of Iron Bark. Swiftmin as well. Swiftmin has changed back to how it was historically, where it will consume an active regrowth, wild growth, rejuvenation, or germination to instantly heal an ally. And it got a couple of adjustments and stuff there as well. I wish they would change the feral sounds. They sound like a kitten. Yeah, I wish they would just make the abilities look more interesting in general. Hunter, so stable size has been increased to 200. It was 60, so you've got way more stable space. Wing Clip can now be used with bows, guns, and crossbows. Wing Clip will be replaced with Concussive Shot at level 13 for Beast Mastery and Marksmanship Hunters. Revive Pet cast time is up to 4 seconds from 2 seconds. And all hunters now have the following abilities: Kill Shot, Scare Beast, Eyes of the Beast, Tranquilizing Shot, Hunter's Mark, and Arcane Shot. So, Kill Shot is a new execute style ability. So you can only use this on enemies with less than 20% health. The marksmanship build that I really like to play relies on Kill Shot pretty heavily. It's a nice, fun ability to have across the board. We've got Scare a Beast. Eyes of the Beast lets you take control of your pet and see through its eyes, and you can also kind of fight with it, but it's weird and not actually that cool. Tranquilizing Shot removes 1 enrage and 1 magic effect from the target. Hunter's Mark. This was an interesting one for beta. So this is no longer a marksmanship talent. You apply Hunter's Mark to the target, allowing the target to always be seen and tracked by the hunter. Only 1 Hunter's Mark can be applied at a time. For the longest time, this added a 5% damage buff, and it just felt really bad. So now Hunter's Mark is back to being, I guess, kind of more of the traditional style of Hunter's Mark, where, I don't know, you probably won't use it unless it's PvP. And then Arcane Shot was given to everyone, but as far as I know, Arcane Shot still requires a ranged weapon, so you can't use it on survival unless they change something. Beast Mastery, we got some talent adjustments, some GCD stuff here as well. Multi-Shot and Beast Cleave now capped at 5 targets. Marksmanship, rapid fire duration was lowered to 2 seconds from 3 seconds, but the total damage dealt by it was unchanged. They basically made this so that you couldn't gain back as much focus by casting rapid fire. Aim shot focus cost was increased to 35. Arcane focus cost was increased to 20. Multi-shot cost was increased to 20 and is now capped at 5 targets. Binding shot is no longer a talent and is learned by all marksmanship hunters at level 33. They put in a new talent, I believe, to kind of replace that being one of those. There's a couple of new talents in here as well. But getting down here, Barrage is capped at 8 targets. Explosive Shot is capped at 6 targets. And look at these survival changes, man. Oh, poor survival. Oh, man. You like see, like, that just is sad. Oh, man. We're going to read them all. I feel like survival deserve at least this much. Tip of the Spear now causes kill command to increase the damage of your next raptor strike by 25%, stacking up to 3 times. Flanking strike now has a 30-second cooldown instead of 40. Chakrams now cost 15 focus instead of 30. And Carve and Butchery are now capped at 5 targets. Wow. I hate they did nothing to my survival spec. I know, like, survival is normally what I default to. Luckily for me, I do like the marksmanship build that you can do now with kill shot and stuff. So I'll at least have that to play because, man. Whew. I'm curious to see if we get anything that's shorter than this. All right, moving on to Mage. Mirror Image is no longer a talent and is learned by all mages at level 44. Mirror Image's damage has been greatly reduced. Frostbolt added to all mirror images, and while your images are active, damage taken is reduced by 20%. Taking direct damage will cause one of your images to dissipate, so it's nice that AoE damage will not get rid of them. All mages get the following abilities: Arcane Explosion, Frostbolt, Fire Blast. I've said this before, but I think this is great for mages because all 3 of these abilities are useful to the other specs. With Arcane Explosion, you have a quick cast AoE ability that can be used by all mages. With Frostbolt, you have a nice like leveling ability that will slow enemies and give you a chance to kill them before they actually get to you. And with Fire Blast, you have a quick instant cast ability that can finish off enemies that have just a sliver of health left on them, which happens a lot when you're leveling. Some talent adjustments have been made. Arcane has a new ability, Alter Time. This is actually a really cool ability. I like it a lot. It alters the fabric of time, returning you to your current location and health when cast a second time or after 10 seconds. The effect is negated by long distance or death. So this is pretty cool because you can cast Alter Time and then you have 10 seconds to just go ham and just do crazy stuff and then teleport back to your full health and then do it again. So this actually sets up some pretty cool scenarios. The only thing is you can't die. You still have to remain alive long enough to either like have that 10 seconds expire, or if you're about to die, you can recast Alter Time to go back to the position you were in. Mastery Savant now has an additional effect, increases all your other arcane damage. There's some additional effects for clear casting. Arcane power cooldown time was reduced. Touch of the Magi is no longer a talent and is learned by all arcane mages at level 33, and it's been redesigned. It applies Touch of the Magi to your current target, accumulating 25% of the damage you deal to the target for 8 seconds, then explodes for that amount of arcane damage to the target and reduced damage to all nearby enemies, and generates 4 arcane charges on cast. A couple of other things there. Getting into fire. So Mastery, Ignite now causes your Phoenix Flames to spread your ignites to 8 nearby enemies. Ignite no longer spreads to a nearby enemy every 2 seconds. So you control when and how you want your ignites to spread. So you can just play as fire and not have your ignite spread to anything and aggro extra stuff or that kind of deal. Because if you want that spread to happen, you now cast Phoenix Flames to do that. Phoenix Flames, because of this reason, is no longer a talent and is learned by all fire mages at level 19. It now has a 25-second recharge time. Damage is increased by 15%. And importantly, it no longer guarantees a critical strike. So it's not, it still can critically strike, but it's not sort of like a guaranteed work in for hot streak like it was before. Phoenix Flames deals reduced damage to secondary targets, and we got some talent adjustments as well. Frost, what do we got? 6 lines? Is that less than survival? Survival is at 6 lines. I don't know if you count this one as 6. Maybe you do. That's pretty close though. Frost Mage, not a lot of changes here. Flurry reduces the target's movement speed by 80% instead of 70%. No GCD on Icy Veins. Frozen Orb is capped at 8 targets. And we got a couple of talent adjustments here. We got a nerf to the Frigid Winds additional movement speed reduction, and a nerf to Ice Nova's damage on secondary targets. Moving on to Monk. Leg sweep radius increased by 1 yard. The Peaks of Serenity Enlightenment buff now grants rested experience instead of an experience bonus. Blech. Spinning Crane Kick is now capped at 6 targets. All monks can now use the following abilities: Expel Harm, Spinning Crane Kick, Touch of Death, and Fortifying Brew. So a couple of things here. So obviously Spinning Crane Kick, nice to have on Brewmaster and nice to have on Mistweaver. Touch of Death has been tweaked. So it's back to its more traditional form. You exploit the enemy target's weakest point, instantly killing creatures if they have less health than you, which is awesome. Deals damage equal to 35% of your maximum health against players or stronger creatures under 15% health, and has a 3-minute cooldown. This is really cool, especially in like Torghast. Like, it definitely takes you 3 minutes to get to the floor boss. So like every floor boss, you can just like annihilate them with Touch of Death. It's pretty sick. We also, getting into Brewmaster, they've got new passive, Shuffle. Nizal's teaching allows you to shuffle during combat, increasing the effectiveness of your stagger by 75%. Shuffle is granted by attacking enemies with your Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. I really don't want to get into the stuff here for monks other than covering the big changes and the target capping. So let's see. For Brewmaster, Spinning Crane Kick has an additional effect. Dealing damage with Spinning Crane Kick grants Shuffle for 1 second and causes your Gift of the Ox healing spheres to travel towards your location. So that's kind of cool. You get sort of like a Demon Hunter vacuum effect on your Gift of the Ox healing spheres when you Spinning Crane Kick. Blackout Kick can now be used while dual wielding. Breath of Fire and Keg Smash now deal reduced damage on secondary targets. Meh. So Rushing Jade Wind is now capped at 6 targets as well. Mistweaver, pretty short here. We have a new ability, Invoke Yulon the Jade Serpent. This summons an effigy of Yulon the Jade Serpent for 25 seconds. Yulon now idles near the Mistweaver and casts Soothing Breath on an injured target, healing up the target and up to 2 nearby injured allies. Soothing Breath gains benefit from Soothing Mist bonuses, similar to Summon Jade Serpent statue. Following talents have been adjusted. Now Invoke Chi-Ji has been redesigned. It's more of a fist weaving sort of talent now. So you invoke the Red Crane, become immune to movement impairing effects. Chi-Ji kicks up Gusts of Wind with your Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick, healing up to 2 allies, and reducing the cost and cast time of your next Enveloping Mist by 33%, stacking 3 times. And Chi-Ji now assists the monk and deals melee damage. Mana T's duration has been reduced to 10 seconds from 12. Windwalker, Fist of Fury can now be used while holding a 2-handed weapon. So in both cases, Brewmaster and Windwalker, they're trying to make it so you can choose whether to dual wield or to use a single 2-handed weapon. If it was me, I would stick with the 2-handed weapon, I think, for the most part, because it's easy to upgrade, at least when you're leveling and stuff. Touch of Death cooldown is increased. Invoke Zwin, the White Tiger, is no longer a talent. So this is something common across all monks now. The The Celestial talent is now baseline. Spinning Crane Kick, damage is increased by up to 6. Mark of the Crane debuffs inflicted upon targets was 5. No GCD on Storm, Earth, and Fire. Fist of Fury, now capped at 6 targets. This makes me sad. It makes me real sad, all this target capping. I get why they're doing it. They're trying to make like mythic dungeons a little bit more difficult. It's also going to make it so that you can't just like AoE pull entire dungeons either. Although not every ability is capped like this, so if you have the right party composition, you're still going to be able to do it. So I don't know. Paladin. So Paladins, a couple of things here. The aura bar has returned. Now you have Crusader aura, Devotion aura, and Retribution aura. All auras have a 40-yard range, and one can be active at a time. Avenging Wrath and Holy Avenger no longer have a GCD. And all paladins can use the following abilities. Turn Evil, the different auras. Word of Glory, which is your new sort of heal. This replaces, I forget what it's called. Shield of the Righteous. So once again, this is one of those things where like mostly just Prot uses Shield of the Righteous, but it's available to all paladins. So it's going to be in that class tab, not the specialization tab. Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, Consecration, and Blessing of Sacrifice. So some of these are actually pretty cool. So the auras all around, just nice to have as a bonus. Word of Glory means you now have this heal available across all the specializations. All paladins now use Holy Power as their resource. So you build up to 5 Holy Power and then you spend it on your abilities. So all specializations have access to this 3 Holy Power cost heal, which you can use on yourself or a friendly target. Shield of the Righteous, actually not bad. You could end up with a shield on Holy as well, potentially. But still mainly you're using this on protection. Slams enemies, dealing holy damage and increasing your armor. It's no longer limited by charges and now instead cost Holy Power. So this is really nice. Not having to track the charges feels pretty good. Crusader Strike is the ret sort of default ability. It's nice to have this for everybody because it adds another DPS button that you can throw in there if you're leveling on Holy or even Prot. Hammer of Wrath is a nice little execute ability. It's really nice to have this across the board as well. In a lot of cases, some of this unpruning actually makes it so that the healing specializations feel pretty good to level on because they get like some extra DPS buttons to push, and in a lot of cases, they end up with an execute ability too. So this strikes an enemy for holy damage, only usable on enemies that have less than 20% health. Or during Avenging Wrath, and it generates 1 Holy Power. Everybody's got access to Consecration, and then Blessing Sacrifice as well. So changes to Holy Paladins. Here, I guess the big one is the Aura Mastery now empowers your chosen aura for 8 seconds, because you're going to have those by default now. Some talent adjustments as well. For protection, once again, we're using Holy Power as a resource. There's a new passive Shining Light. Every 5 Shield of the Righteous that you cast makes your next Word of Glory cost 0 Holy Power. So this is really important because when you're casting Shield of the Righteous, that's your defense for Protection Paladin, and you want to keep casting that because you need to keep that armor stack up. So here, it makes it so that every 5 times you do that, you get a free self-heal. So you're not really having to debate whether or not you want to spin that Holy Power on a heal or spin it on Shield of the Righteous. Now, you might be in a scenario where the heal makes sense, but in most cases, Shield of the Righteous is going to be what you cast, and then, you know, you're going to hit 5 of those and get a free self-heal, and that's going to keep you topped off. Let's see, moving on from there. Light of the Protector has been removed because it's effectively been replaced by Word of Glory. So Word of Glory has an additional effect. When you cast it on yourself, it's increased. The healing's increased by up to 150% based on your missing health. Got some talent adjustments as well. Rets, this is super exciting. Wake of Ashes is no longer a talent and is learned by all Ret Paladins at level 34. The damage is increased, but it now deals reduced damage to secondary targets. It also generates 3 Holy Power, which gets you straight into a Holy Power finisher. Some adjustments there as well. Divine Storm is capped at 5 targets. Priest. Shouldn't be too crazy here until we get to Shadow. Fade now has an additional effect. It now reduces the range at which enemies will attack you, which is actually kind of nice. All priests can now use the following abilities: Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death. So once again, really nice to have these on Holy Priest because you have an additional DPS button you can push, and you have an execute ability in Shadow Word Death. Discipline has a new ability. They've got Mind Seer, Mind Blast as well. So it's nice having these built in there as well too. And then let's see. Holy Nova now deals reduced damage if there are more than 5 targets. Holy, Circle of Healing is no longer a talent and is learned by all Holy Priests at level 30. Holy Nova deals reduced damage if there are more than 5 targets. And we got some talent adjustments as well. And then Shadow is where we got all the big crazy changes. So the Insanity mechanic in its current BFA form is gone. I believe in a recent beta build, they actually just got rid of the talent that allowed you to opt into its current gameplay as well. I don't know if that's going to stick, though. So I'm not going to get too much into this. We'll cover the new mastery here. Your damage is increased by 4% for each of Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Devouring Plague on the target. During Void form, all targets receive the maximum effect, which means they receive the 12%, regardless of what's on them. So there's a new ability that I want to touch on here, Devouring Plague. This afflicts the target with a disease that instantly causes shadow damage, plus an additional 4 shadow damage over 6 seconds. Heals you for 300% of the damage dealt. The 4 shadow damage over 6 seconds, that's not an accurate number. But basically, this is a big bad damage over time ability that you have as a Shadow Priest now. And as you can see, it's pretty integral to the rotation as it's being included in your mastery with Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch, which are the dots that you're currently using a lot on Shadow Priest. Void form has been redesigned, now has a 90-second cooldown and increases damage by 20% for 15 seconds. Void form no longer reduces the cooldown of Mind Blast, but now refreshes the cooldown of Mind Blast and grants you 2 charges while in Void form. You no longer gain haste every 0.5 seconds while in Void form. There's just a lot going on. Mind Blast has charges. Shadowy Apparitions has been redesigned. A ton of talents have been adjusted. Really big Shadow Priest reworks, to the point that, I'll probably end up just making a separate video about the changes. Moving on to Rogue. Crimson Vial. Healing got a nerf. And it got a duration reduction and energy cost reduction. So I don't know. In playing beta, this feels really bad, actually, to me. It feels like Crimson Vial does nothing. I don't like this change at all. All rogues can now use the following abilities. So they all got instant poison, wound poison, and crippling poison back. They also now can use Shiv, which applies a concentrated form of your poisons, and they all got Kidney Shot, which is a finishing move that stuns the target. So poisons are back for rogues. Anarchy, is this European stream so early? Yeah, basically, it's a spontaneous one. I'm off today, so I was like, let's do it. Plus, it was just good timing with the pre-patch notes and everything coming out as well. And I haven't been on to do a live stream here because of IRL stuff in a couple of weeks. Assassination. So we got some more emphasis on the poisons there. Fan of Knives is now capped at 8 targets and some talent adjustments. Outlaw pistol shot is now an offhand attack for passives such as combat potency and reduces movement speed by 30% instead of 50%. The big one here, roll the bones, no longer consumes combo points but has a 45-second cooldown and a 30-second duration. Additionally, roll the bones is no longer replaced by slice and dice. And then also, between the eyes no longer stuns the target, and it now replaces, or it no longer stuns the target and replaces kidney shot. Now has a 45-second cooldown instead of 30 seconds and increases critical strike chance. Feels like garbage. I hate this change. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Blade Flurry is now capped at 4 additional targets. And we got some adjustments to talents as well. Subtlety, Shadow Dance now has 1 charge instead of 2 and grants all the combat benefits of stealth for 8 seconds instead of 5, and also increases the damage dealt by 15%. So less charges, but a little bit more powerful and effective. I've got some other changes in here. Shuriken Storm has been capped at 8 targets. Nothing like insane for Rogue. For the most part, like, I don't like the Crimson Vial nerf, and I don't like the fact that they took the stun off of Between the Eyes. Makes me sad. Shaman! Oh god, Shaman. You guys are getting... tell me how you really feel. Okay, so a new passive, Improved Reincarnation. Reincarnation now revives you with an additional 20% health. All shaman can use the following abilities: Flame Tongue Weapon, Chain Heal, Healing Stream Totem, Lightning Shield, Chain Lightning, Flame Shock, and Frost Shock. So shocks are back, some of the weapon buffs are back, and we got some additional healing stuff too. All in all, like, it's nice to see all these abilities be available across all 3 specializations for shaman. Elemental was in for some big changes, but they basically all got reverted. So for the most part, Elemental is playing the same. So yeah, there's just tweaks here for the most part. Enhancement got changed like crazy, and I personally am not a big fan of it. The Maelstrom Resource and Maelstrom Bar have been removed. We got Wind Fury Weapon back and Wind Fury Totem as well. Maelstrom Weapon's been redesigned, so when you deal damage with a melee weapon, you have a chance to gain Maelstrom Weapon up to 10 times, or you can get up to 10 stacks. Each stack reduces the cast time of your next damage or healing spell by 20%. And you can consume a maximum of 5 of these. And it also increases the damage or healing of your next spell by 20% as well. So you can build it up, and you can use 5 stacks to get a instant cast version of your next damaging or healing spell that also does double damage or healing, which is fine. And I don't want to get into the rest of these changes. This is another one where the changes are basically so big that it would just take a whole video to talk about it. And then getting into Resto, we got a couple of new abilities or tweaked abilities, and that's about it. Not a lot of changes for Restoration. For Warlock, okay, we got a new ability, Fell Domination. It basically lets you instant cast a demon summoning. It has a long cooldown, but sometimes you just need to cast your Voidwalker really fast and get stuff off of you, and that lets you do that. You also have Ritual of Doom back, so you can sacrifice a random participant of the ritual to summon a Doom Guard. Let's see, what else? You can now use Eye of Kilrog in arenas and battlegrounds. The cast time for Summon Imp, Voidwalker, Fell Hunter, Fell Guard, and Succubus is now 6 seconds, up from 2.5, and your Fell Domination reduces that time by 5.5 seconds, giving you a half-second cast. All Warlocks have access to new / old curses. So we have Curse of Tongues, Curse of Weakness, and Curse of Exhaustion. Curse of Tongues increases the cast time of all spells by 30% for 30 seconds. Curse of Weakness increases the time between the enemy's attacks by 20% for 2 minutes. And Curse of Exhaustion reduces movement speed by 50% for 8 seconds. They're fine. We got some talent adjustments as well. We get into Affliction. The big one here is Malefic Rapture is a brand new ability. Your damaging periodic effects erupt on all targets, causing shadow damage per effect. This is your new soul shard spender to do big damage after you have gotten all your dots onto your target. It's really nice, super awesome. Big fan of this. Unstable Affliction duration is now increased to 16 seconds, up from 8. No longer costs a soul shard and no longer stacks. What else? Some talent adjustments and stuff there as well. Demonology. Wild imps now spawn more immediately after Hand of Gul'dan, and 2 to 3 imps spawn in faster succession. In addition, if they path fail, they now teleport to the Warlock. So some nice quality of life stuff there. Felguard's Fellstorm is now capped at 8 targets. And if we get down to Destruction, there's some talent adjustments here. So mostly across the board for Warlocks, not a whole lot of crazy changes. Curses are back. Affliction has a brand new ability that really makes the spec feel really, really good. And for the most part, that's about it. Moving into Warrior. Ooh, some more target capping destruction. Whirlwind's now capped at 5 targets. All warriors now can use the following abilities. Shattering Throw, which has been tweaked so that it deals increased damage to absorb shields. So if you run into, they kind of wanted this to be like the special thing for this. If you run into an enemy with an absorb shield, Shattering Throw deals up to 500% increased damage against that. All warriors also have access to Intervene, Slam, Shield Block, Hamstring, Whirlwind, Spell Reflection, Ignore Pain, and Shield Slam. Feels like a mishmash, honestly. Like the unpruning for warriors just kind of feels like a hot mess. It's not that the abilities are bad, but it's kind of like, what? Like Shield Block on Fury and Arms. You have the people that are like, well, you can use a shield. Yeah. Okay. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, or that it's not any less weird. You can Whirlwind on Prot Warrior, but you basically just want to Thunderclap most of the time instead, to the point that even the anima powers that are in Torghast for Prot say your Thunderclap or Whirlwind. I don't know. It's just weird. Shield Slam, again, kind of a weird one to have for everybody, but I guess. Arms has a new ability, Piercing Howl, and the mastery Deep Wounds has been redesigned. So now Mortal Strike, Cleave, Ravager, Colossus Smash, Warbreaker, and Bladestorm inflict deep wounds, dealing bleed damage over 12 seconds and increasing the damage the enemy takes from you by 9%. Very, very nice change to the mastery, in my opinion. Bladestorm's capped at 8 targets, some talent adjustments. Fury, the big one here is we've got single-minded Fury coming back. So now you can dual wield one-handed weapons on Fury, and your damage done will be increased by 12%, and your movement speed is increased by 5%. Whether this is ultimately the best thing, I don't know, but it feels real good, and I like playing single-minded Fury myself. A little nerf to the restoration of health from Bloodthirst. We got a rage cost reduction for Rampage. Recklessness now instantly generates 40 additional rage. Blah, 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 blah. Bladestorm capped at 8 targets as well. Protection. Revenge now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. No longer has a cooldown, which is nice. Costs 20 rage, down from 30, and replaces Slam when learned. Your successful dodges and parries now have a chance to make Revenge cost no rage instead of being guaranteed. Woo! Intercept has been removed. Thunderclap deals reduced damage on secondary targets, and we got a bunch of talent adjustments as well. Quite a few, actually, on Prot Warrior. We got some talent shuffling and everything else as well. So that's class changes overview. That's the pre-patch. So like quick recap, we got the Death Rising event, new customization options. We've got the removal of achievement requirements for flying and allied races, some changes to auction houses, all the crazy class changes, the changes to our items and rewards, PvP, world events. We've got the level, item, and stat squish coming in, the new starting experience, as well as the new way to level through Chromie time and being able to play an expansion from 10 to 50, and then some changes to some other stuff here. Most importantly in this column, I think the user interface quality of life adjustments. So that is your pre-patch sort of info and recap with some insights from myself into like kind of how that's all going to work. Like I said, for the more in-depth class changes, you guys can look for a video coming from me about those. Once pre-patch goes live and I can get on my own actual characters and make a quick video via that, then that's what I'll do, because right now I don't want to make a beta character video, because the stuff in beta could totally change. So I really just want to, hey, this is what is actually available in pre-patch and this is how it works. So that stuff should be coming out next week. It should be Shadow Priest for sure, probably Enhancement Shaman. I think those had the two like biggest reworks out of everything. And then I'll probably do like in-game, you know, a couple changes and examples and stuff. So the second part of this live stream is expansion concerns. So before Shadowlands, I put out a video, you know, saying goodbye to World of Warcraft. And basically what I said, the short condensed version, is I wasn't confident in the current WoW team's ability to produce a good expansion. And I don't, to be very clear, I always intended to play Shadowlands, okay? Regardless, like it's World of Warcraft. I'm going to play the new content. That's just how it is. Like you don't play the game for 14, 15 years or whatever and then like, a new expansion, whatever. Or even if you do, you come back to it later. I don't know. That's just how it is for me. So always intended to play Shadowlands, but more to the point, I didn't think they were going to make an expansion that was fun enough for me to want to make more YouTube content about, because that's a big thing for me, is that the game has to be fun enough, not just for me to play it, but for me to want to make guides and content for it. And that was the gist of what I was saying in that video. But what happened is the alpha came out, and, you know, I keep tabs on Wowhead and all that kind of good stuff. And I was looking at, you know, everything about the new expansion, and I was keeping tabs on how the developers were responding. And the thing that brought me back and got me interested in Shadowlands and maybe go, yeah, okay, this is going to be worth making content for, was the dev response to community feedback. And that has been really, really good up until like a couple weeks ago, or maybe as far back as a month ago. And this has caused some of the concerns and issues that I had about Shadowlands initially to resurface. And I just wanted to like run through and talk about a couple of those things and like let you guys know, because I know like for my part, I've been hyping up Shadowlands. You know, it's good for my YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. But like at the end of the day, like I'm not going to play a game that's not fun. So it doesn't benefit me to hype up Shadowlands if it's going to suck, because I'm not going to just keep making content for a game that I don't have fun playing. So there's no benefit to me for that. But I have been hyping up the expansion because they have been doing such a good job listening to community feedback. And most importantly for me, the main feature that I want to engage in Shadowlands, which is Torghast, is looking pretty good. But I think that the like fair thing to do is let you guys know, like, oh, hey, we're back to like, I'm kind of concerned about the expansion in general now, and let you guys know what those concerns are so you can be aware of them, because you're going to have different reasons for playing the expansion than I am, right? So like I'm all in on Torghast, but you might not care about Torghast at all. You might just be here because you liked my class guides and you're just like tolerating all my Torghast rambling. So you might be more concerned about rating or, you know, that kind of stuff. So what I want to do is wind this back and touch on a couple of things that have come up basically within the past 2 weeks, and it's going to take me a little while, we actually had a good amount of a WoW news here, and we're not hitting on all of this stuff. We're basically going to go back to the patch before they announced the delay is kind of what I want to start with here and show, because this is where things started to sort of go off the rails a little bit for me, and I started to get kind of concerned. So we're right around here, I believe. The Shadowlands pre-patch build. Let's roll this back just a little bit. Come on, Wowhead. I believe in you. All right, so we have the beta wipe. Okay, I think we're in the right spot now. We're about 12 days back, which is about right as far as where we were for this patch. So right here, this is where it kind of starts. Class changes recaps for Shadowlands. Covenant ability tuning and reworks. Okay, so here's the big thing. If you look at this patch, and this is a beta patch, if you look at this patch, this is the patch where they just destroyed Covenant abilities. It's not the only thing they did, but this is where they kind of destroyed Covenant abilities. So if you look, and legendaries also got destroyed. So look at the highlights. Many Covenant abilities had changes. See your spec below for changes. Resto Druid legendaries. This one's buffed. These two were nerfed. Monk legendary nerfed. Discipline Priest legendary has an additional effect during Spirit Shell. Night Priest new conduit. Blah 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 blah. Many Covenant abilities received tuning changes, with some Covenant abilities reworked. These are the reworked. See the full post for tuning changes. So let's go. Where's the full post at? Here we go. Okay, so if we get in here, get into classes, this is where they just started like destroying stuff. Death's Due for Death Knights, totally like reworked. If we get into Demon Hunter Covenant abilities, I think Elysian Decree actually got a buff. Sinful Brand. I think Demon Hunter got some changes like baseline to their damage here. But a lot of these Covenant abilities, without getting into and going through all of them, just got like nerfed. Final Mirror will instead inflict 151% instead of 198% of spell power. Let's go down. What else do we have? Flagellation got that was updated. Fey Transfusion, a little bit of a boost there, but they also kind of reworked it as well. Chain Harvest got a buff to like healing and a nerf to damage. So anyway, looking through these notes, the point that I want to make here is that they just kind of went through and they looked at the Covenant abilities and they realized how influential these abilities were, not just on their own, but also effectively versus other Covenant abilities. So if you watch like Preach's video on this, he basically talks about how, you know, they've been doing raid testing and stuff like that, which is something I've not been doing in the beta. So I don't have this as a frame of reference, which is why I refer to his video. But where like 50% or more of a class's DPS was coming from their Covenant ability in these scenarios, which is absolutely insane. But then when you look at that, it's like, even within that realm, some of those classes were doing like garbage DPS compared to others. So you might have, making numbers up out of nowhere, Enhancement Shaman is doing 100 damage, and 50 of that damage is coming from their Covenant ability. But then you have, Subtlety Rogue is doing 1,000 damage, and 500 of that damage is due to their Covenant ability. So there's this problem where a large portion of the damage and output, throughput, whatever you want to call it, for the character is coming from the Covenant ability, which first off is bad and not working as intended, because your Covenant ability should be like a supplemental part of what you're doing, not the core of what you're doing. So there's balance issues on that end, right? Of them just fixing it within the specialization or the class that you're playing and trying to get those numbers right. And think about that. If you're looking at, okay, well, this Covenant ability is 50% of damage for rogues, you then have to figure out how do you tweak that one ability so that it is adjusted appropriately for all 3 rogue specializations, right? So you have a balance issue right there. And we've talked about these balance issues before. But next, you have to look at that and go, okay, well, if Covenant ability A is 50% of rogues damage and Covenant ability B, C, and D all suck and aren't anywhere close to that, now you have to balance that ability for those specializations. You also have to balance that ability against the other 3 Covenant abilities that you're looking at, right? So we're adding another layer here because you can't just balance that one ability. You got to make sure that that ability stays in line with the other ones. Otherwise, you're swinging everybody over towards an ability because it's the most powerful one. This was the case with Death Knights, where Death's Due for the Night Fae was just like the strongest ability. And so they nerfed the ever-living crap out of it in order to kind of like bring it in line and give you the option of choosing something else without missing out on a huge chunk of your damage output. So you're balancing that one ability between the 3 specializations. You're balancing that ability against the other 3 Covenant ability options. But now you're also balancing all those against the other classes and specializations, because you can't just balance it between those specializations and those Covenant abilities. You have to look at where is the damage output of the class and specialization as a whole. Because if you have an Outlaw Rogue that's dealing 1,000 damage and you have a Windwalker Monk that's dealing 100 damage, there you have balance issues as well. So in trying to balance all this stuff, they have so many knobs and so many things to twist and turn, and it's not as simple as like, oh, hey, we can just like apply this like damage debuff to the class or whatever. It's not that simple. They've made this system incredibly, I don't even want to say complex. It's just convoluted. It's kind of a mess. And we've said before, like, hey, you should just take the abilities away from the Covenants and let people switch to whatever they want, because it eases that burden on them to try to balance this stuff so perfectly. Because you can just, if you can hot swap between the abilities, you can just pick the one that's the best. So if they screw up the balance, it's not that big of a deal, because you could just switch away from the like crappy ability that they need to fix while you wait for them to fix it. It's not as big of a deal. But even if you do that, you still have all the other balancing issues to worry about there as well. But it becomes, in my opinion, less of a problem if they do something like that. So in this patch, basically what they did in response to seeing that is they just crushed Covenant abilities. And this is the other side of the issue, is basically if the Covenant abilities are a huge source of your power, then balancing all the Covenant abilities becomes a huge issue, right? Not just against each other, but against other classes, right? So just talked about this. If Death's Due is the best Covenant ability for Death Knights, and it's a significant portion of your damage, then you have to make sure that the other 3 options for Death Knight are kind of in line with Death's Due across all the specializations. Then you have to balance that against all the classes, right? Or on the other side, you nerf the Covenant abilities into the ground so that it doesn't matter as much which one you have, and they're not as large of a portion of your DPS or your throughput. And now the choice of choosing a covenant for the covenant ability is no longer meaningful. It doesn't mean anything because, you know, if you're doing 1,000 damage and 50 of that is the throughput from your covenant ability, who cares? Right? So they've kind of put themselves in this position where they just can't win. And so this is one of the things that is really concerning for me. And I think this is kind of the obvious thing that's really concerning is the covenant abilities. They just don't seem, they're being stubborn. This is why I say like 2 weeks to a month ago, I started to get concerned about Shadowlands. And a lot of it was this change in approach that we're seeing from the developers. And really what that comes down to is like all this time they've been listening to feedback. They've been very responsive. They've been making changes. And as soon as we got to covenants and conduit feedback, they just clammed up. It's like they just stopped. They were like, nope, we're right. You're wrong. It doesn't matter. And now they're starting to see the issues that we've been talking to them about for all this time. So, and they're recognizing those issues and the problems to the point that they had to delay the expansion. And if you look at their announcement, they're specifically delaying the expansion to work on in-game system and mechanics. They're working on covenant abilities and they're working on conduits and soulbinds as well. And that is the next thing here is the conduit. I don't understand. Like, this is another situation where they're doing exactly they're being BFA Blizzard. If I, you know, I'm just being honest. They're being Battle for Azeroth. We're not going to listen to you. We're going to find like, I'll explain it here when we look at the patches for the covenant abilities. Let me find this real quick. It's still showing me live stuff, which I don't want. I only want, just give me the beta. So I want to show you their solution to covenant abilities. This is ridiculous. Okay, so I've gone over soulbinds before, and I've talked about how the soulbinds themselves have conduits, and those conduits have different types of conduit slots. So if we jump over here to beta real quick, we go to tools, we go to soulbound calculator. Really quickly, there are 3 types of conduits, right? Conduits are little empty spots on your soulbinds where you can socket in these things that improve your abilities. And there are 3 types, okay? There's, let's see. So we have the potency, endurance, and finesse. Okay, those are the official names, right? So endurance is the little shield one here. This is tied to abilities that help you survive or heal yourself or reduce damage. You have your finesse conduits, which are the ones that allow you to do stuff with like your utility abilities. So if we look at this one here, it's stuff like your movement abilities or your buffs or your, you know, in the case of warrior, it's like your shouts and things. And then you have potency conduits. And these are the abilities that actually are the slots that let you affect your throughput abilities. So if you're on a DPS character, it's letting you affect the stuff that actually deals damage and affects your damage meters and that kind of stuff. If you're on a healer, this is what lets you affect your actual heals. So in the conduit system, there was always going to be this issue where you wanted to pick up as many of the potency conduits as possible because they're the ones that actually affect your damage and your healing and stuff, right? These endurance ones and finesse ones are nice, but they're not exciting. They don't like really help, you know, change that damage or healing meter or anything like that. So people who are focused on min-maxing their character, and let's be honest, like I'm not necessarily one of those people to that severe of a degree, but even me, I was looking at it and I was going, wow, these other conduits suck. The finesse ones are the best. So there was an issue where all of the soulbind trees had 3 finesse conduit slots. And so what people would do is they would basically try to route through those. And if we look at this update here, it said, in this week's Shadowlands beta build, soulbinds have had their tree layouts changed in a small but important way. All soulbinds now have access to 2 potency conduit sockets, whereas previously all trees had 3 potency sockets. The goal of this change is to increase the flexibility of soulbinds and make it more viable to use one soulbind for multiple specializations. Okay. There's so many layers to this, okay? So the goal of this change is to increase the flexibility of soulbinds and make it more viable to use one soulbind for multiple specializations. The reason this is an issue is because your soulbinds are not tied to your specialization. If you switch specializations, your soulbinds do not change. They stay the same. If this is my build for my Prot Warrior, okay, let's just throw this stuff in here. If I switch to Fury, it stays exactly like this. So what this means is that all these conduits that I've socketed in here don't change. And the issue with this is that they currently have this on a cooldown system where you cannot change it as often as you want to. And this is like the core of this issue. They say we want to drop the soulbinds, the potency conduits, down to 2 instead of 3. So here's the reason why they say that makes a difference. Due to potency conduits effects being mostly spec specific, which is true because they affect those throughput abilities, which normally are the spec specific abilities. A lot of your utility and even some of your defensive abilities are available across all 3 specializations. So when you are slotting in like this defensive ability here, this says the cooldown of Die by the Sword and Rage Regeneration or Shield Wall is reduced by whatever. That applies to all 3 specializations, not a big deal. But if we get over here, let's see. Oh, these are all kind of generic, I guess. But for example, and I'm also doing Prot Warrior, which is a little weird. Let's see. Yeah, like this one here says slam critical strikes, reduce the remaining cooldown of Ravager or Blade Storm. So due to their effects being mostly spec specific, they are the conduits most likely to make a soulbind layout feel locked into one specialization. While we expect this to be a natural way for many players to engage with soulbinds, picking one soulbind per spec and building them out accordingly, this like makes me want to scream. Why do you expect the natural way for players to engage with soulbinds to be to pick one per spec? It doesn't make any sense. The community has been screaming at Blizzard. This is not how people are going to play, but this is how they keep insisting that we are going to play. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand. This is literally just not listening to the community feedback at all. It's straight up ignoring it. It's not acknowledging it at all. Like, this is not how people are going to engage in soulbinds. It's not. And even if it is, if you're on a druid and you pick one soulbind, you can't pick one soulbind per spec. You just can't do it. I think it's more likely that you have a person who just plays one spec and they have 3 different loadouts for one spec than it is you have a person who plays 3 specs and wants to use a different soulbind for each one. It's just not how it's going to work. We want to make sure there's room to discover other setups that work for you based on the content you prefer to participate in. The removed potency sockets have been replaced with either an endurance or finesse socket, which, by virtue of primarily being class-wide effects, are easier to justify using across multiple specializations. We're looking forward to see how you choose to build out your soulbinds and your continuing feedback on this system. Okay, so more issues here. All right. First off, the endurance and finesse conduits are boring. They're not interesting in like 9 out of 10 cases. They are not exciting. We're going back to the problem of the covenant abilities, where the abilities are so boring that you just don't care. And honestly, the potency conduits are the same sort of deal, where it's ridiculous. Like the amount of stuff, like Rampage has a 10% chance to refund a charge of Raging Blow. Okay. This goes up with rank, but I think like 7 or 8 is like raid tier or something. So you're not even going to get up that. I mean, from 10% to 12.9%. Like, these conduits and the pacing at which you're going to get them, like, they just don't feel exciting. They honestly, I think that the conduit system is really, really boring. And that the most interesting thing about the conduit system is not the conduits themselves, but the sort of little passives that you pick up from your soulbind characters along the way. So, first off, these are boring, right? So, yeah, they're class-wide effects. And honestly, most of the time, the class-wide effects are not exciting to play, because you want to play a Fury Warrior. You want to play a Frost Mage. You want to play a Havoc Demon Hunter. You want to play your specialization. And when you're getting into this soulbind thing, like, you want stuff that makes your specialization feel even better, not that makes your generic, like, class crap that you don't care about better. It's just like you're killing the like thrill, the excitement of this system by doing this. Second off, you're not really changing anything, because people want that damage throughput, or they want that excitement. People are going to pick the path that gives them the 2 potency conduits. Like 9 out of 10 times. I have theory crafted soul binding paths and trees for multiple classes, multiple specializations, trying to figure out what I wanted to play and what, covenant I wanted to go and everything else. And in like 9 out of 10 cases, I always wanted to have 2 conduits that were potency conduits, or 3. I wanted to have the maximum amount of potency conduits, because they were the most interesting conduits out of what is largely like not an overly exciting pool in the first place. My Sweet Potato Pie says, I don't like to see Tsetzuko sad. I'm not sad. I'm just like frustrated, because they were doing so well. And as soon as we got to Covenant and Conduits, it's like they literally just turned into BFA Blizzard and we're like, we don't care. We're not listening to feedback. And it kind of blows my mind, because we're going to look at another blue post that like further like sends this home. So we have all the issues with the Covenant abilities that haven't gone away, and Blizzard has just realized are exactly what we told them. They're going to cause a bunch of issues. They're going to be hard to balance. Blizzard says, oh, we're just going to balance everything, and that's why it'll all be okay. We know that's not the case, because they just have never proven that they can do that in the first place. And with that particular beta patch where they just nerfed everything into the ground, that's not exciting. That does not inspire confidence at all. Then we get this conduit thing where they're like, hey, we're going to reduce the 3 potency sockets down to 2 so that you can have a boring conduit, a boring soulbind setup. Like, we're just going to take the excitement out so that it's generic as hell and you can use it across multiple special. Like, what? I can't. I'm trying like not to just like scream right now, because this is so stupid. It's like, hey, you know what? You love supreme pizza. This person loves meat lovers, and this person likes to put pineapple all over their pizza. And you know what? Or maybe sometimes you want supreme, sometimes you want meat lovers, sometimes you want, Hawaiian pizza. But we only have one pizza. And we know that And we can't make more pizzas. We only have one pizza. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take off the ham and the pineapple. We're going to take off the veggies. We're going to take off the meat. And we're going to make everything into a cheese pizza because you're always okay with cheese pizza, right? Right? And it's like, what? Are you kidding? That's exactly what they're doing. They're taking off all the flavor. They're taking off all the toppings. They're taking all that stuff off and just leaving you with a cheese pizza. When what they could do is they could turn on the ability for you to say, hey, today I want a supreme pizza. Today I want a meat lovers. Today I want a Hawaiian pizza. By just making it so that when you switch your freaking specialization, it changes the soul binds and it works just like a talent system. You just switch and then you can set this up however you want for that specialization. Like, I don't understand what the resistance is to what is such a simple solution. And that's where I'm going to stop that rant. I have to. I'm gonna like Hulk rage out here if I keep going on it. So there's another little cherry on top of everything here that, in my opinion, further shows that they don't have a clue. And I gotta find it here. So we got the 2 potency conduits each. Where's the other one? This was another blue post one too. Hopefully I can find it. This is coming like after this Wowhead post 3 days ago. Amount of renown needed to unlock triple potency conduit slots and soul binds. That's 0 now because they don't exist. Here we go. Yep, this is the other one. The weekly cooldown on conduits. I'm hungry now. Yeah, me too. I haven't had breakfast at all. Respect to pineapple guy. That's me. I also like pineapple on my pizza. So, unsubscribe. Okay, so this is the other issue with conduits. And honestly, like, these 3 things are the things that just have me worried because they show that Blizzard has stopped listening. They've just stopped listening and they're being stubborn and they're being stupid. And in patch 9.1 or 9.2 or whatever, they're going to fix it when they could have just listened to us and fixed it in the first place. So in the current beta iteration of these soulbind calculators, this is the other issue. Okay. Now it makes sense if you could just change your spec and you had a blank layout here that you could plug in everything and you could have different soulbind builds per spec and they just swapped when you were in your spec. That would solve a lot of issues. Okay. The reason you can't just go, oh, well, you know, what's the big deal? Why don't you just like reset the conduit and just plug it back in for your new spec every time? It's because they currently have a cooldown on it where you can only reset your conduits or your soulbind trees once per week. Okay, and the reason for that is they don't want people to be hot swapping their conduits in between bosses and stuff for raids. I get it. It's not that there's no reason for it. It's just a stupid reason, honestly. It causes more problems than I think it solves. So you can't just, go, oh, you know what? All right, now I'm playing Arms Warrior. Let me go down here and just plug all this stuff in. And then, oh, you know what? I switched my spec. Let me clear these out. And now I'm going to plug in the stuff that I want for Prot Warrior. You can't do that because you only get to reset this tree once per week. So that's being updated here. They've made changes to it. The new system, let's go right here. We've also received a lot of feedback about the conduit system. Many of you have expressed concerns that the current system will unreasonably limit experimentation and multi-spec play early in the expansion. Not just early in the expansion, all the time in the expansion. While the existing weekly cooldown may provide sufficient flexibility once players have all 3 soulbinds fully unlocked, because we think that they're going to do 1 soulbind per specialization for whatever stupid reason, okay, that's why they say that they think it's going to provide sufficient flexibility once players have all 3 soulbinds unlocked. It's not because they actually provide flexibility. It's because they think you're going to go, this one's for Prot, this one's for Arms, this one's for Fury. Instead of going, this is the one that I like in all scenarios, and I just want to swap the conduits for it. Okay? So first off, in my opinion, this is BS. We agree that it is initially too limiting. No, it's just too limiting all the time. A single weekly reset also fails to draw any distinction between someone who only wants to adjust a single conduit and someone who wants to clear and rebuild their entire soulbind tree. Yeah, I've brought this up multiple times. If you get a new conduit that you want to try out, let's say that this is your conduit tree, okay, and you've got Brutal Victory, and you unlock Indelible Victory, and you're like, hey, I want to try it out and see if I like it better. You literally have to spend your weekly reset to plug in that conduit. And there it is. It's done. Guess what? If you don't like this and you want to go back to Brutal Vitality, tough. You got to wait a week, and then you can reset it and you can plug it back in there. It's that limiting. Okay. So they're making some changes. So in an upcoming build, we will be replacing the weekly cooldown on changing conduits with a more flexible system. When first unlocked, the Forge of Bonds, which is where you do your soulbind thing, will be charged with 10 conduit energy, and placing a conduit into a socket will consume a charge. So every time, like if you plug this one in, you're down to 9. If you swap it out for Victory, you're down to 8. If you swap it back to Brutality, you're down to 7. Okay, so if you get a new one and you don't like it, it costs you a minimum of 2 charges to try the thing and go back to what you were on. Conduit energy recharges at the rate of 1 per day, up to a cap of 10. And adding a new conduit to your collection immediately restores 1 conduit energy as well. So this is the caveat here. This is how they're eliminating that need to spend the 2 charges, right? So if I have Brutal Vitality and I get a new, entirely new conduit, I can plug it in. It will consume a charge and then instantly restore the charge. But I still have to pay the 1 charge to swap back to Brutal Vitality. Our goal with this change is to ensure that, especially when players are acquiring new conduits and only have access to a small number of soulbinds and conduit slots, all players feel free to try out new upgrades and to adjust their soulbinds to support multiple specializations or activities. After the initial collection period for a given character, 7+ swaps per week should allow for more adaptation to suit specific blah, blah, blah. Are you kidding me? Why? Why? Is this an improvement on the weekly system? 100% yes. Why are they being so stubborn about this? I know they have their reasons, but the community is telling them, your reasons are stupid. This feels bad. Please listen to us. We are playing this. We are experiencing this. We do not like this. It's limiting. It doesn't let us play the way that we want to play. For years, you have been like expanding the game to let people play the way that they want to play. Dual spec, full spec, swapping talents at the touch of a button, or you're swapping your specs at a touch of a button, putting in tomes so you could shuffle your talents. I get that maybe you don't want this to be as flexible as that, but you could just solve this one by changing it so that when you switch specializations, you have empty soulbind trees that you can apply, and then keep this system. I don't even mind this system if it's applied to a single spec. I don't know. How do I transfer a level 1 character to check out Exile's Reach? I made a level 1 but was not offered for a transfer. The Exile's Reach thing is going to come out with the pre-patch. So you got to wait till Tuesday, and then when you make a level 1 character, that'll just be an option. Just prevent hot swapping during instances. Yep, that's another like easy thing that you can do. Time gaining stuff is almost never fun for me. I'm a super casual player. I'll never get to really raid, so this kind of stuff makes me rage. Absolutely. Kind of feel sorry for the devs who are actually having to implement all this, then change everything next week. The game designers are making all the bad decisions. The devs just do what they're told. Yep. I mean, I've been there. I've been there. So I definitely understand. And then let's see. I think we've got another beta build from this past week as well. And this is many new class and spell changes. And when we get in here, again, it's all over the place. That's my impression of the patches from the past 2 weeks, is that they're all over the place. And between these 4 things, okay, Covenant ability balance, conduits, like the conduit swapping and the soulbind trees in general, and the way the class balance patches and changes are going, honestly, the only impression I get from this is stubbornness and chaos. That they don't know what's going on with the class balance. They don't know how to balance the Covenant abilities against each other and against other classes and everything else, especially with some of the changes they've made to classes. There are some reworked specializations, in particular Enhancement Shaman, that I just think are garbage and don't feel good. Some of them are middle of the road, like Balanced Druid, to me, honestly, is a little middle of the road. Some of them feel pretty good, like Shadow Priest, but that's, once again, all over the place, kind of chaotic. And then just the stubbornness. This is the thing that has me more concerned than anything else. Like, balance changes, sure, those happen all the times. Like, things are never going to be fully balanced. It's not really about that. That's concerning, right, going into an expansion, but that's fixable. At least to a point. It's this sudden, like, surge in them sticking to their guns on something that the community has been super vocal about and provided a lot of feedback about. It really, really does feel like the way that they approached Azerite armor in Battle for Azeroth. And that has me super concerned, because the leveling in Battle for Azeroth, aside from a couple quirks here or there, was fun. It was fine. It was when you got past that and you got into the in-game systems and you started to realize how limiting, the Azerite armor was. In some cases, how hard it was to determine what powers were the best powers, the grinding for AP, like all that kind of stuff that they'd gotten feedback about is what felt bad. And it took them 2 or 3 patches, major patches, to fix that system. They had to entirely rework it. And right now, it feels like the same thing. And if you haven't played beta, I'm telling you, conceptually, some of the stuff that they put forward sounds good. It sounds like they have good intentions. Like, hey, we don't want people to hot swap for raids because, we don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. We don't want you casual players to have to, hot swap your stuff, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds like it's well-intentioned. It sounds like there's good reasoning. But when you play and you experience this stuff as a player, it does not feel good. It doesn't. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It's not even just neutral. It actively feels bad. This stuff actively, when I, just from playing beta in a scenario where I can literally just create characters on a whim that are max level and just go into whatever conduit or covenant or whatever I want to do, mess around with conduits and stuff. Like, I messed around with conduits, basically completely bored with them. Not excited by them in any way. And in fact, really was just pissed off by the fact that I'm in a beta, and they still have the weekly reset in the beta. So you can't even swap out the conduit abilities and test things out. Like, garbage. Choosing what covenant to pick is ridiculous, because there's covenants that I think look cool, but I don't like the ability. There's covenants that look cool and have a cool ability, but that ability sucks. or you're just trying to figure out which one's better. It's like going back to an Azerite power. Well, which one's actually the best? It's just bad. It doesn't feel good. And it's all stuff that could be resolved if Blizzard had the same approach and attitude that they've had for the majority of the alpha and beta. But it's like as soon as the hashtag pull the ripcord thing came up, they just clammed up and were like, nah. So I was hoping that to some degree, them delaying the expansion was going to be them addressing those issues. And this week, with this conduit blue post about the potency conduits, and also with the blue post that we just looked at about the conduit cooldown system, these don't look like the solutions that players want. These look like Blizzard recognizing there's a problem and trying to band-aid fix it in a way that doesn't make it look like they screwed up. I mean, they say, we initially agree that, you know, this system is too limiting. They say over here, like, the potency sockets are the spec-specific ones that are more exciting, and we're switching to the endurance and finesse ones, which, being class-wide, are easier to justify across multiple specializations. They even say that they expect you basically to pick a soulbind per specialization and just roll with it. So, like, the omission of all the problems is in here, and I feel like their solutions are missing the mark like 100%. Reducing the potency conduits doesn't solve the problem at all. You have the same problem where people are going to want to pick the potency conduits, and that's going to limit their builds. But now, instead of having 3 potency conduits in a limited build that actually provide you with a little bit of interesting stuff that's specific, you're just going to have more of the generic boring conduits that don't provide a lot of excitement for what you're doing. And then, like, this whole conduit cooldown system, like, just make it spec specific. It's easy. Like I said, I don't even mind this conduit energy system. I think this is actually fine if you just eliminate the fact that it feels like you're fighting with your own character's specializations if you want to change. I mean, how many people like to play Feral Druid, but if they want a dungeon queue, they got to go Guardian and or Resto and get a quick queue that way. You know, those people are going to be like punished for wanting to play Feral, but like needing to get into queues and stuff. Or even if you're just a triple DPS class and you just want to change it up, you know, for whatever reason, you're like, you know, I do Mythic Plus as Affliction, but then I PvP as Destruction, but then I like to raid as Demonology, and like, this is just going to limit that so hard. So I don't know. That's my rant here at the end. That's what I had to say about my issues, my concerns. Those really are, that's the core of them. Like, a lot of things can be solved. Honestly, the class balance issues outside of Covenant abilities can be solved fairly easily, I think. But the complexity, and I don't even want to... Complexity kind of sounds like a good word. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like, oh, it's complex. There's a lot of inner working systems, and like this affects it. No, it's convoluted, right? Because it's confusing. It's a jumbled mess. And the amount of convoluted crap to deal with at Shadowlands in-game and try to balance is just really concerning to me. And the hope that I was hanging on to is the attitude they've had this entire time up until about, 2 to 4 weeks ago, of really listening to the community when we were vocal about things. And it's not an issue of, a minority of players just screaming and whining about something. That's definitely, it's not the case. And I guarantee you that if the system goes through the way it is and you play it in Shadowlands, like, you're going to go, damn it. I think you guys, like, I think in a lot of cases, like, you guys should know, like, I try to shoot straight with you. I try to assume I try to work under the understanding that the way that I play the game is not the way everybody else plays the game. What I like is not what everybody else is going to like. I try to keep an open mind, look at things from different perspectives, and just realize that, what's not fun for me might be fun for someone else and vice versa. And this is just one of those scenarios where I really feel like these issues that we're looking at in Shadowlands, they're universal, with the exception of, and call me out if you want, with the exception of like Blizzard shills and like stubborn people, honestly, that just make an opinion and then can never change their opinion based on experience or additional input or feedback, honestly. There may be a couple of people out there that genuinely like this system, but I think that on a large scale, it's going to be a very small number of people that are like just cool with this the way it is. And yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe because of the Covenant system, all the people that are super hardcore are going to have 4 characters that are the same specialization, and then they could just have like a soulbind for that specialization because they don't play any other specials. I don't know. We'll have to see. Why? Do you think the working from home arrangement could be attributed to this mess? The brainstorming of ideas from day-to-day office work is now gone, so it could be a factor. So I think no, because they've been responsive and stuff like for months now. I do think that there could be a lot of misfiring between teams. There could be a lot of updates that are taking place that are not across the board, which I think some of the impression that I have of things being chaotic could definitely be because of the work from home situation and not everything getting like updated and turned in like in unison. So for example, if you have different teams working on different classes for balance and stuff like that, you might have teams that finish before other teams, and in that case you might see some stuff coming in. I think it could attribute to some of the chaotic feel of things for sure. But I think these other issues, they've been responsive to these before, and they're kind of like expansion wide game design level issues. And I think that those don't necessarily, I don't think they're as affected by the work from home stuff. And I said it in my previous video for WoW that I kind of thought that the expansion being delayed to later this year, honestly, I feel like that's kind of a bad indicator. A lot of people are taking that as a good indicator because Blizzard is recognizing there's some issues and they need to fix it. And I'm looking at it as, well, with all the holidays and stuff coming up, they're recognizing that they have some issues, but they're not taking the amount of time that I think they need to actually fix the issues. And I think what we're going to end up with is a lot of these band-aid solutions here that don't actually address the core issue. They just make things kind of more tolerable and not so like rage, and they're still going to feel bad. They won't feel as bad. And I don't know if like this is just what we're going to end up with, or they're going to find these band-aid solutions to get them through the launch of the expansion and then fix stuff in 9.1. I'm not really sure. But I personally think that they didn't take enough time to address these issues. Like I've said and other content creators have said, they're convoluted. They made this so complex for themselves that it's just not an easy fix. And I think that with the work from home situation and the pacing of things, like they need more time than they're taking. And so that's kind of another concern of mine is I'm like, I don't know that they took enough time. I know that I think it's good that they were able to do the delay. I think there are some legal obligations potentially for them to have to launch in 2020. And that might be the reason that the expansion got pushed back to sometime later this year. That also might be why we're seeing the Band-Aid solutions. So I don't think that necessarily this is entirely like a game design dev team just being 100% stupid. I know that, you know, because they've said that the expansion is going to launch in 2020 or whatever, and they've like taken pre-orders and all that kind of good stuff. There may be some legal implications in them having to launch in 2020. And so it may just be that these Band-Aid solutions, they're taking the time to come up with these so that they can launch in that like window of time where they have to launch and then figure stuff out from there. And if that is the case, then that's good. It's good if that's the case, because it means that there's something further out than these Band-Aid solutions. But I don't work at Blizzard. I don't have any insight to any of that, so I can't say that that's the case. What if we compare it to BFA resetting Azerite armors for each spec? Not even talking about corruption between specs. It's not that bad. I mean, it doesn't feel good. I guarantee you it doesn't. And I wouldn't use BFA as the comparison for any of that, because BFA just like, I don't want to say universally, but it was not a good expansion launch for them by any means. It was pretty terrible, pretty bad, and they need to follow up, not with something that isn't quite as bad as BFA. They need to follow up with something that's like Legion or whatever. It's going to blow people's socks off and be like, oh, BFA was a fluke, not, oh, BFA was an indicator of deeper issues with the game. Because I don't know. I think for me personally, if it came down to something like that, like, oh, hey, BFA is just sort of the new trend in WoW design, then I think that I would just stop. I would just stop making content for it. I would still play the expansions because, like I said, I'm still going to play them, but I feel like it wouldn't be something that I could be as passionate about. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me. Give you guys a heads up here if you weren't aware. Something not WoW related. Steve, that's not what I wanted. If you hit up Steam, if you guys have Steam, they have the Autumn Festival going on. And there are tons and tons and tons of demos for some pretty sweet looking indie games. This is going on all weekend. So if you need something to do and you want something that doesn't cost yourself some money, definitely hit up Steam, jump into this and check out some of these free demos. There's some pretty good looking stuff in here. That's what I'm going to be doing on my days off today and tomorrow. So I just figured I'd throw that out there and let you guys know that this was going on and this was happening. Go check out some cool demos and have some fun this weekend. The thing says, I'm not in beta, don't have first-hand knowledge of it, but I hate the fact that they're limiting how to spec your character, especially for multi-role tunes. Yep, I agree. As someone who plays all the specializations and makes content for all the specializations, yeah, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. It's definitely going to limit what I can do as a content creator in terms of pacing. Oh, I didn't see this. What do we have here? Save 30% on selected game services. Which ones? Which ones, Blizzard? This is good to know. %30 on a race change, faction change, and character transfer. This is available now through November 15th. Okay, so if for whatever reason you do, with the pre-patch, want to switch to an allied race character, or do a faction change, or switch servers, we got 30% off the services. So they're still, in my opinion, a little overpriced, but there's some stuff I need to swap around and change to help me with content creation on YouTube. So I'm definitely happy to have a discount on that stuff. So yeah, there's a little WoW announcement there at the end for you guys in case you didn't know. Through November 15th. I wonder if that's like an indicator of their new expansion date. Like a week later, right before Thanksgiving. Does that make sense? Could be the 17th, could be the 24th, right before Thanksgiving. Who knows? Not enough time, in my opinion. But yeah, through November 15th, 30% off race, faction changes, and character transfers. All right, everybody, you have fun this weekend. I will see you back here on Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Starting next week, we will be back into the groove of regular weekly streams. This past week, I was over on Twitch. If you want to check out that VOD, you can hit up Twitch and check it out. I was playing Genshin Impact over there. Previous week, I was sick, so I know I've been gone for two Tuesdays here on YouTube, but starting next week, we're back. We're going to jump into the pre-patch and check all that out. I'm going to be leveling up some new characters, and I think I'm going to start out trying to play through the Burning Crusade expansion, and I think that'll be a lot of fun because I have a ton of nostalgia and Burning Crusade memories, and it'll be more than a leveling stream. It'll be a trip down Tsetzuko memory lane, which hopefully will be fun for you guys and fun for me as well. So everybody, like I said, have a good day, have a good weekend, and I'll see you back here next week. All right. Peace.